Admit it. The Strange Tale of Depsey the Rabbit. Chapter 3. Studio Politics and Old Debts. The morning fog had burned off by the time Depsey arrived at Stage 2, leaving the cartoon world under a harsh, cloudless sky that made everything look slightly overexposed. The smaller rehearsal space felt cramped after yesterday's grand haunted house set, its painted space backdrop showing every crack and touch-up in the unforgiving work lights. Props scattered across the stage told the story of their upcoming space adventure episode. A cardboard moon sporting a fresh dent from yesterday's load-in, a tinfoil spaceship held together with silver tape and optimism, and a collection of alien costumes that looked more like discarded Halloween decorations than convincing extraterrestrial beings. The whole production had the slightly shabby make-do quality of a children's theatre troupe working with limited resources.
"Places for space blocking, everyone!"
called the stage manager, a harried-looking stopwatch who'd been timing cartoon performances for longer than anyone could remember. "We're starting with the lunar landing sequence, then moving into first contact protocols." Depsey adjusted his space helmet, a fishbowl with antenna that had seen better decades, and tried to focus on the familiar comfort of rehearsal routine. Chuck bounced excitedly in his Cosmic Explorer outfit, complete with a ray gun that made satisfying zap sounds when he pulled the trigger. Lucy floated gracefully in her space princess costume, her porcelain surface catching the work lights like starlight. But it was the fourth member of their space crew who made Depsey's stomach tighten with unease. Oculus stood center stage with disturbing precision, his 6 eyes on their flexible stalks moving in patterns that seemed to track things no one else could see. Where Chuck's enthusiasm was infectious and Lucy's grace was natural, Oculus performed with an eerie accuracy that went beyond mere talent. Each gesture was perfectly calculated, every line delivery timed to invisible cues that only he seemed to receive. "Remember," Oculus said in his oddly modulated voice, his eyes rotating to focus on different cast members simultaneously. "The audience wants something deeper than traditional cartoon physics. I can see exactly what they respond to." The way he said "see" made Depsey's fur stand on end. Those 6 eyes weren't just looking. They were watching, processing, analyzing in a way that felt more mechanical than artistic. "Enhanced performers," muttered Gus Grumworth from his director's position behind the lighting board. The perpetually grumpy cartoon Grump was directing this space episode, and his usual complaints had taken on a sharper edge since Oculus joined the production. "Something ain't natural about the way that one works." Gus leaned closer to Depsey, hoping to reignite that magic his star performer once had, his voice dropping to a whisper. "At least you're still yourself, Rabbit. This one moves like a puppet with too many strings. 6 eyes seeing what exactly?" Depsey found himself nodding, recognizing something familiar and horrible about Oculus's enhancement. The way those eyes tracked invisible movements, the perfect timing that went beyond intuition, the mechanical precision disguised as artistic brilliance. It all felt connected to something he didn't want to think about too deeply. "Oculus," Gus called out from his director's position, consulting his increasingly frantic notes. "Your blocking suggestions yesterday improved our audience response metrics by 30%. What's your read on the first contact sequence?" All 6 eyes focused on the painted backdrop with unsettling intensity. "Help me," Oculus responded quietly, and then suddenly, "I have calculated the intent of the scriptwriters and his voice carrying a strange discordant confidence even for a space alien. "Audiences want intimacy. They want to feel seen." The word "seen" echoed strangely in the small theater, and Depsey noticed several cast members shifting uncomfortably. There was something about the way Oculus spoke about audiences, not as groups of cartoon viewers, but as individual entities whose attention he could feel across impossible distances. "It's like he knows what they want before they do," Gus muttered to his assistant director, making rapid notes about script changes based on Oculus's insights. I've never seen anything like it. Neither had Depsey, but he had a terrible suspicion about where such abilities might come from. The same protective system that kept him safe from the consequences of his actions might also enable other kinds of modifications, other ways of connecting performers to audiences across distances that shouldn't be bridgeable. Chuck Chatterbox to wardrobe for costume adjustment, came the call from offstage, interrupting his increasingly dark thoughts. Just a quick fix to the ray gun holster, Chuck said cheerfully, bouncing toward the wings. Be right back. Don't solve any alien mysteries without me. As Chuck disappeared behind the painted flats, the stage manager's voice echoed through the space with an announcement that made everyone freeze. Attention cast and crew. Playhouse executives will be observing today's rehearsal with particular interest in our enhanced performers. Please maintain professional standards and be prepared for talent evaluation. Oculus's eyes literally brightened at the announcement, all 6 pupils dilating with something that looked disturbingly like anticipation. The mechanical precision of his movements became even more pronounced, as if he was receiving new instructions from an invisible source. Depsey felt ice settling in his stomach. Executive observation during rehearsal usually meant someone's job was in jeopardy, but the specific mention of enhanced performers suggested this evaluation had a different purpose entirely. The stage door opened with unusual precision, despite the building's tendency toward warped hinges and stubborn latches. Vulture strode in with his characteristic sharp-eyed efficiency, dark suit immaculate, despite the dusty theater environment. 2 nervous assistants trailed behind him, clipboards at the ready, their attention immediately focusing on Oculus with the intensity of scientists observing a fascinating specimen. Mr. Vulture! Gus rushed forward with obvious relief, gesturing toward their enhanced performer. Perfect timing. We were just working through the first contact sequence with some truly innovative audience engagement techniques. Vulture's gaze swept the assembled cast with clinical assessment, but his attention clearly centered on the 6-eyed performer. I'm here to evaluate the integration protocols, he said, his voice carrying the cold efficiency of someone checking inventory rather than observing art. Mr. Westward has particular interest in enhanced performer development research. Even Vulture spoke Westward's name with obvious reverence, though Depsey noticed he seemed nervous despite his authority. The assistants were already taking detailed notes about Oculus's eye movement patterns, recording data about something that went far beyond traditional performance evaluation. Integration? Lucy asked quietly, moving closer to Depsey during the administrative commotion. What does that even mean? Before Depsey could answer, Oculus turned all 6 eyes toward Vulture's clipboard, somehow reading the executive's notes in real time and adjusting his performance accordingly. It was a display of impossible awareness that made everyone present deeply uncomfortable. I can see exactly what you're looking for, Oculus said to Vulture with mechanical confidence, and Depsey realized with growing horror that this wasn't metaphorical boasting. It was a literal description of abilities that shouldn't exist. Gus Grumworth shuffled closer to Depsey, his usual complaints replaced by genuine wariness. That one ain't natural, he muttered. Something's been done to him. You can see it in the way he moves, like he's receiving signals from somewhere else. Depsey nodded silently, recognizing the signs of corruption he'd seen in himself. The same system that provided his daily protection had clearly evolved, finding new ways to modify cartoon performers for purposes that went far beyond simple talent enhancement. He realized with growing dread that he might be witnessing the development of his own replacement, a more efficient model that wouldn't require daily maintenance or personal guilt. Chuck returned from wardrobe just as Vulture was settling into his observation position beside Gus's director's chair, immediately noticing the changed atmosphere in the theater. How does he know exactly what the executives want? Chuck whispered to Lucy, watching Oculus perform with uncanny precision. It's like he's reading their minds. His eyes, Lucy whispered back, her voice tight with concern. They move like they're watching something we can't see. Something that's not even in the room with us. Both of his friends looked to Depsey for explanation, but he found himself trapped between the urge to warn them and the need to protect himself. How could he explain that Oculus's enhancement was connected to the same system that kept him safe? That his years of protection had provided cover for experiments that turned innocent performers into mechanical audience monitoring devices. Vulture checked his pocket watch with obvious nervousness, his gaze shifting between Oculus and the stage door. Our primary investor wants to see the integration firsthand, he announced to his assistants. He's particularly interested in enhanced performer development metrics. The 6i model has exceeded all projections, one assistant reported, consulting detailed charts about audience response data that somehow correlated with Oculus's eye movement patterns. Early trials suggest we're approaching viability for the next generation models. Primary investor? Gus asked, clearly out of his depth in discussions about mysterious integration and financing, despite his directorial authority. Mr. Mystery, Vulture said, and the name seemed to echo strangely in the small theater. He'll be arriving shortly to evaluate our progress. Depsey's blood turned to ice. The protective ink he'd taken that morning suddenly felt insufficient against the wave of terror that crashed over him. Mr. Mystery, the source of his protection, the collector of his debt, the entity who'd promised that their business would eventually require a more permanent resolution. All 6 of Oculus's eyes swiveled toward the stage door with mechanical precision, tracking movement that no one else had detected yet. When the door opened moments later, it moved with the same unnatural smoothness that Depsey remembered from their previous encounters. Mr. Mystery entered the theater like he owned it, which Depsey realized with growing horror he probably did. The tall figure in the perfectly tailored suit moved with measured confidence, his red eyes catching the work lights in ways that defied basic optical principles. His presence immediately changed the atmosphere in the room, making the very air feel colder and less reliable. The cast fell silent with the instinctive recognition that something far more dangerous than a studio executive had just entered their workspace. Even cartoon physics seemed less dependable in his vicinity, as if the fundamental rules of their reality had suddenly become negotiable. Mr. Mystery! Vulture rushed forward with obvious nervousness that contrasted sharply with his usual executive authority. We're honored by your visit. The integration has exceeded all expectations. Other executives materialized from the wings, minor functionaries who'd been lurking during the rehearsal, and all of them showed the same deferential behavior toward the newcomer. Whatever hierarchy Depsey had imagined governing blame it on the Ink Playhouse politics, Mr. Mystery clearly operated on a level far above even Westworth's legendary influence. Chuck leaned closer to Lucy, his voice barely audible. Who is that guy? New money, darling, Lucy whispered back, but her usual confident social analysis wavered as she studied Mr. Mystery's unnatural presence. But something's very wrong about him. Wait, Chuck said suddenly, his excitement overriding the tension. This is about broadcasting, isn't it? Like Professor Gosling's research, you're actually testing moving picture transmission. Mr. Mystery's red eyes fixed on Chuck with amused interest. Broadcasting? He said, and a ripple of sophisticated laughter went through the assembled executives. My dear fellow, keep dreaming. You are thinking rightly. Professor Gosling's theories are charming academic exercises, but hardly practical applications. I am about making things happen in this cartoon world. But the integration here Chuck began. Is simply enhanced performance methodology, Vulture interrupted smoothly. Nothing as fantastical as airwave transmission. Really, Chuck, you read too many theoretical papers. Gus Grumworth had gone completely silent, his usual grumpiness replaced by the kind of primal wariness that cartoon characters rarely experienced. Other performers clustered together instinctively, their natural comedy training no match for the psychological pressure radiating from the mysterious investor. But it was Oculus's response that confirmed Depsey's worst fears. All 6 eyes tracked Mr. Mystery's movement with mechanical precision, and recognition sparked across his enhanced features like receiving a transmission. "The primary observer," Oculus whispered, and his voice carried the mechanical cadence of someone reporting status, rather than expressing excitement. Then quietly, almost imperceptibly, and in a different voice, "He knows what the doctor did." Mr. Mystery's gaze swept the assembled performers with clinical interest, but when his red eyes met Depsey's across the stage, the recognition was mutual and terrifying. That smile, polite, patient, predatory, was exactly the same one Depsey remembered from their original arrangement years ago. "Please," Mr. Mystery said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the theater without any apparent effort, "don't let me interrupt this enhanced performance. I'm very interested in both talent evaluation and integration development." He settled into Gus's director's chair with casual authority, and Oculus's 6 eyes immediately began reflecting his satisfaction, as if they were designed specifically to monitor his approval. The mechanical precision of the enhanced performer's responses made it clear that whatever broadcasting integration meant, it involved more than simple talent improvement. As the rehearsal continued under Mr. Mystery's observation, Depsey found himself performing on autopilot while panic built in his chest. The casual way Mr. Mystery had mentioned talent evaluation suggested that this visit wasn't just about checking on Oculus's progress. It was about assessing all the performers in all their performances, including his darker sort of performances. "Remarkable integration," Mr. Mystery said quietly, his attention shifting between Oculus's mechanical perfection and the baseline performers around him. "The 6-eye model performs beautifully." But there was a tone of doubt in his voice that no one could pick up except for Depsey. The way he examined Depsey's cracked space helmet with mild interest made it clear that protective equipment, physical or supernatural, might not be as reliable as previously assumed. "Protection can be so fragile," Mr. Mystery continued, as if discussing the weather, "when systems evolve beyond their original scope." During a blocking break, he approached Depsey with the measured steps of someone who had all the time in the world and complete confidence in the eventual outcome of their conversation. "Time moves forward, Depsey," he said conversationally, his voice dropping to normal speaking tones that somehow felt more threatening than dramatic whispers. "Accounts settle. What was borrowed must be returned. It's simply how things work." The casual certainty in his voice made argument impossible. This wasn't a negotiation or a threat. It was a simple statement of fact, delivered with the patience of someone explaining basic mathematics to a child. "I thought," Depsey began, his voice cracking despite his attempts to maintain dignity. "After all these years, after all the deliveries, I thought we were finished." "Finished?" Mr. Mystery's red eyes showed genuine amusement. "Oh, Depsey, your years of faithful service were merely building toward this moment. So many successful acquisitions. Dr. Moose, Mr. Muffins, all those others who got too curious or too close to the truth. Your work has been exemplary." He gestured subtly toward Oculus, whose 6 eyes were currently tracking the director's movements with mechanical precision. "But enhanced performers represent the future. Your particular skill set, the personal touch, the trust you inspire, is becoming redundant. I look for significant progress toward replacing traditional methods. Point, point, point." The horrible understanding crashed over Depsey like ice water. His years of faithful service, his carefully maintained friendships that made targets trust him, his ability to lead victims to isolated locations. It had all been preparation for this moment. Mr. Mystery had been developing a system that would make his dark work obsolete. Such devoted friends, Mr. Mystery continued, his gaze drifting toward Chuck and Lucy with the same mild interest he'd shown in evaluating props. Such investment in your well-being. Your friendships have provided excellent cover for our operations. Trust makes the work so much easier, doesn't it? The implication was clear. Depsey's friendships hadn't been safe harbor from his crimes. They'd been tools that enabled them. Every laugh shared with Chuck, every kind word from Lucy had made him more effective at luring victims to their doom. His protective ink had kept him safe not just from rift creatures, but from the psychological breakdown that should have come from years of betrayal and murder. Mr. Mystery's eyes drifted toward the small windows where the rift's distant glow was barely visible on the horizon. Some debts require distance to collect properly, he said thoughtfully. There are places where accounts settle more permanently. You've delivered so many there over the years. The mountain air can be so clarifying. Wouldn't you agree? The reference to the rift sent another wave of terror through Depsey. All those colleagues he'd led there over the years, Dr. Moose with his trusting excitement about scientific discovery, Mr. Muffins chattering happily about their hiking adventure, so many others who'd thought they were going on friendly outings with their beloved Depsey. And now he was learning that the rift wasn't just where he'd disposed of victims. It was where he himself would eventually be disposed of. Take some time to consider your position, Mr. Mystery said with the same patient certainty. These decisions shouldn't be rushed, but they are inevitable. We'll speak again soon, very soon. Before Depsey could respond, Chuck and Lucy were approaching with Gus, still deep in discussion about Oculus's strange abilities and what they might mean for the future of cartoon performance. Mr. Mystery's demeanor shifted seamlessly to polite business interest as they rejoined the group. I do hope you're feeling better, Depsey, he said with concern that sounded genuine to anyone who hadn't heard his previous comments. And I hope you're all enjoying our enhanced programming developments. As he prepared to leave, he addressed Vulture with obvious satisfaction. Excellent work today. The integration exceeds projections. Please continue. Don't let me interrupt the creative evolution. Then, as if remembering a minor detail, he added, Oh, and before I forget, Dr. Dinglegreen will be by shortly for Oculus's routine maintenance. Enhanced performers require regular adjustments to maintain optimal function. The casual way he mentioned medical maintenance for what everyone had assumed was natural talent sent a chill through the assembled performers. While he's here, Mr. Mystery continued with the same conversational tone, perhaps he could evaluate the baseline performers as well. I know you understand. The stage door closed behind him with normal mechanical precision, but everyone remained frozen in place, processing the casual announcement that they were all now candidates for medical evaluation by someone whose job was maintaining enhanced performers. Within minutes of Mr. Mystery's departure, that evaluation arrived in the form of Dr. Dinglegreen, who swept into the theater carrying a surgical bag and clipboard. The cartoon possum was unnaturally tall and thin, his surgical coat pristine white, except for suspicious stains near the pockets. His smile revealed rows of needle-sharp teeth that gleamed like surgical instruments, and his two bright eyes held the eager intensity of someone who genuinely enjoyed his work. Dark fur covered his elongated snout, which twitched constantly, as if smelling something delicious in the air. Time for your routine maintenance, Oculus, he announced with disturbing enthusiasm, his sharp teeth clicking together as he spoke. Such exciting work. The integration is performing beautifully. Chuck watched in growing horror as Oculus complied mechanically, showing no resistance as Dr. Dinglegreen began examining each of his 6 eyes with clinical fascination. What had appeared to be talent enhancement was revealed as an ongoing medical procedure performed on a living performer. Excellent visual integration, Dr. Dinglegreen muttered, using tools that looked more surgical than medical on Oculus's eye stalks. The reception is optimal. Each eye receives different feeds, remarkable multiplexing. Suddenly, something seemed to break through Oculus's mechanical compliance. His eyes rolled wildly, tracking frantically around the room, and a voice, his original voice, terrified and desperate, broke through. "Help me! Someone please help me! I can't stop seeing. They're making me watch things, horrible things. I can see." Dr. Dinglegreen chuckled, but with a hind of frustration, a sound like surgical instruments scraping together, and patted Oculus's eyes with disturbing tenderness. "Oh, you silly little thing," he cooed in a sickeningly sweet voice, his sharp teeth glinting. "I could just sink my teeth into those adorable eyeballs of yours. Such wonderful work you're doing." Oculus's tormented voice faded back into mechanical compliance as Dr. Dinglegreen made a few more adjustments, dismissing the desperate plea as if it were merely an amusing technical glitch. He spoke as if Oculus wasn't a person standing right there, just an interesting piece of equipment requiring regular calibration. The mechanical way Oculus had returned to accepting the examination, showing neither pain nor personality after his brief breakthrough, made it clear that whatever integration meant, it had transformed him into something that wasn't entirely cartoon anymore. "This isn't right," Chuck whispered to Lucy, unable to look away from the horrifying maintenance routine. "Did you hear what he said? What is he being forced to see?" "Those aren't improvements," Lucy replied, her voice tight with revulsion and growing fear. "They're modifications. And that thing he said about sinking his teeth." As Dr. Dinglegreen adjusted mechanisms in Oculus's eyes, he muttered technical details that made everyone increasingly uncomfortable. Even Gus, despite his directorial authority and usual grumpiness, watched the procedure with obvious unease. Fascinating. The way experimental broadcasting integrates with cartoon nervous systems. The Rojob would find this prototype integration absolutely fascinating. "The what now?" Chuck asked, his natural curiosity overriding his horror. Dr. Dinglegreen didn't look up from his work. "Advanced Anatomical Research Entity. Theoretical collaboration partner. Appreciates the malleability of consciousness and flesh." "What kind of entity needs to study cartoon anatomy?" Lucy demanded, her protective instincts fully activated, though her voice shook slightly. "The kind that understands survival requires adaptation," Dr. Dinglegreen replied with disturbing satisfaction, his twitching snout seeming to savor the fear in the air. "Enhancement is evolution, and modern minds need stronger stimuli than your grandfather's comedy. Stagnation is unfortunate." With Oculus's maintenance completed, the enhanced performer returned to his mechanical performance mode, his 6 eyes now operating with even more obvious artificiality. Dr. Dinglegreen's attention turned to the other performers with hungry interest, his sharp teeth clicking together as he studied them. "Now then, time for your evaluations. Such wonderful, unenhanced specimens." His snout twitched as he approached Chuck and Lucy. "So much potential for development." He approached Chuck and Lucy with surgical enthusiasm, producing business cards despite their obvious reluctance to accept them. "When you're ready for enhancement, and you will be, call me," he said with absolute confidence, his needle teeth gleaming. Integration is the future of cartoon performance. So many interesting ways to improve upon basic anatomy. This prototype work will lead to such deliciously twisted developments. His tongue, unnaturally long and dark, flicked across his lips. The childer. The audience will love what we're creating. They'll never be the same. Depsey stepped between Dr. Dinglegreen and his friends, his protective instincts overriding his fear of exposure. "They're fine," he said firmly. "Everyone's fine. No evaluations needed." Dr. Dinglegreen's disappointment was palpable. "All right, you're the star here, so you must know. But the servants of the road job must continue their work, wouldn't you agree?" "I work hard. We all work hard here. I follow my script and I do as I am told. Isn't that enough?" There was a desperate crack in Depsey's voice. "Of course, Depsey the rabbit. We will be contacting you soon." Dr. Dinglegreen sighed. "You have done such a fabulous job." As Dr. Dinglegreen departed with an unsatisfied smile, he pressed business cards into everyone's hands, despite their protests. The cards felt unnaturally warm and seemed to pulse slightly in their palms. Just as he reached the stage door, Mr. Mystery appeared in the doorway, as if he'd been waiting. The two figures paused, and something passed between them, not words, but a look of mutual understanding that made everyone present deeply uncomfortable. "The specimens are adequate," Dr. Dinglegreen said quietly, his needle teeth glinting as he smiled at Mr. Mystery with disturbing familiarity. "Good," Mr. Mystery replied, his red eyes fixed on the doctor with obvious satisfaction. "The timeline remains flexible. Continue as discussed." Dr. Dinglegreen's snout twitched with what might have been pleasure. "Of course, the road job's requirements are always accommodated." They stood there for a moment longer, two predators sharing a private joke, before Dr. Dinglegreen slipped past Mr. Mystery and disappeared into the hallway. Mr. Mystery's gaze lingered on the departing figure with something almost like paternal pride before he too vanished from sight. The entire exchange had lasted perhaps 10 seconds, but it left everyone in the theater feeling like they'd witnessed something they weren't supposed to see. "Remember," came Dr. Dinglegreen's voice echoing back from the corridor, his sharp teeth audible in his speech. "The row job understands that those who resist adaptation face unfortunate consequences, and the children are waiting for stronger entertainment." In the aftermath of the morning's horror, Chuck and Lucy looked to Depsey for explanations he couldn't provide without destroying himself. "What was that about?" Chuck asked, staring at Dr. Dinglegreen's business card with obvious revulsion. The card seemed to grow warmer in his hand. "And what's a row job? And did you hear what Oculus said about children?" "Did you see what he did to Oculus?" Lucy added, her voice shaking. "That wasn't medical care, that was torture. And those teeth. And what he said about stronger entertainment for children." Both of his friends pressed him for answers about the new workplace reality, about his apparent familiarity with both Mr. Mystery and Dr. Dinglegreen, about the business cards now in their pockets that felt like time bombs waiting to explode. Depsey found himself unable to warn them, without revealing his own complicity in the system that now threatened them. His years of protection had enabled the very corruption that was consuming their world, transforming innocent performers into mechanical monitoring devices and bringing predatory doctors to evaluate his friends for future enhancement. As they walked away from the theater together, Oculus remained behind, continuing his mechanical performance for the empty space, his 6 eyes still tracking invisible movements that only he could see. The broadcasting feed never stopped, the enhanced integration never paused, and the routine maintenance schedule ensured optimal function regardless of whether anyone was actually watching. The blame it on the Ink Playhouse workers they passed whispered about enhancement opportunities and integration, normalizing overnight the transformation of their workplace into something that valued mechanical precision over artistic expression. Other performers showed subtle signs of modification, Too perfect timing, unnatural awareness of audience response, eyes that tracked movements no one else could detect. Depsey carried the weight of understanding that his moral cowardice had enabled all of it. Every day he'd felt protected by his ink. He'd been capable of horrors that would have broken an unprotected mind. Every friend he'd made had become a potential tool for gaining victims' trust. Every conversation with Mr. Mystery had been a progress report on his killing efficiency. His own cartoon violence had been harmless, pies, anvils, slapstick falls. But his real work had been luring innocent cartoons to the rift, one trusting friendship at a time. And now this integration system was creating something far more sinister, designed to corrupt on a massive scale. He understood with growing horror that Oculus represented the future, a prototype that would make individual killers like himself obsolete. The rift's glow was visible on the horizon as they left the playhouse. That distant phenomenon where accounts settled permanently, where debts were collected through methods that didn't require ongoing medical maintenance. Mr. Mystery's promise echoed in his mind. We'll speak again soon, very soon. His protection was running out, his debt was compounding, and the system he'd enabled was now consuming everyone he cared about. The business cards in Chuck and Lucy's pockets were proof that his friends had become collateral damage in a corruption scheme that he'd helped make possible. Everything was perfectly normal at Blame It on the Ink Playhouse and Productions. Enhanced performers received excellent medical care. Baseline performers were evaluated for improvement opportunities, and accounts were settled according to well-established business practices.